The seventh question of this series is, what's the relation of sexual energy with Taoism? This is a much more theoretical question, filled with some dense information. So feel free in skipping this video if you want to dive deeper into the knowledge of what is sexual energy and how it is being used in other traditions. Sexual energy in esoteric circles is typically associated to Taoism. More exactly, the work of Mantak Chia, which is the most popular work in the West, and then on Yogic Tantra that got popular with the ancient Hindu text of Kama Sutra and other Hindu Tantra texts of the left path called Vamachara. This gave rise to a whole world of literature and methods in the West that are now the so-called Tantra, which is nothing more than a way to prolong sex and are very far away from their spiritual origins. People now have been using those techniques only for sexual purposes. The problem with this specific approach was that many authors merely stripped away the techniques from their spiritual tradition and context, and obviously their objectives. This is not a good idea. The techniques are aimed to get a specific effect. Unlike current traditions, the ancient ones, whether Hindu or Taoists, were very precise in their use and objectives as well as the energy that they wanted to focus at. They don't focus only on the physical effects like the retention of semen to prolong sex, but they focus on much more profound and spiritual and energetic goals. This is the same thing as taking some medical pills and use it to get high. Sure, it may work for that purpose, but it also has a whole range of side effects since they were created for a completely different purpose. The similarities between the sexual energy practices of Taoism and the sexual energy practice of Indo-Vamachara Tantra are in the sense that they are both spiritual traditions with self-transcendence as their goal. They are both effective in this aim when practicing according to their tradition. In a lower aspect, we have what is now called of sex magic, popularized by Aleister Crowley. Crowley was by no means the founder of Western sex magic, but he was the one who popularized it in the public eyes. This practice often involved ritualistic and ceremonial techniques that use the energy of orgasm to reach a particular physical goal. The energy elicited in here are totally different than the ones on Taoism or Indo-Vamachara Tantra, even though Crowley's techniques were heavily based on Indian Tantra. Much of the Crowley system of magic was done during intercourse, by focusing all your will and imagination upon a desired goal in the moment of orgasm. And you could supposedly use these techniques for all kinds of magical acts like invocation, talisman charging, and so on. The goal here was not only self-transcendence as used in the old traditions, but much more connected to achieving real-world benefits. As you can understand for yourself, the energy work that is done here used by external means much more than internal. The energy currents are worked on it in a grosser way than the ones used in the Eastern traditions, which are used much more with the subtle and refined energy methods. The energy centers used are also much lower, since they are being used mostly for physical manifestation of some objective that you have. You don't really need a developed awareness of the subtle energy currents for that goal. The approach used in Charisma School is radically different than the ones used by all the previous traditions, both in goals and in techniques. First of all, we differentiate from the goal. We don't aim for self-transcendence, nor actual ritualistic physical manifestation using sexual intercourse. Our goal is simple, is to become aware and use the subtle energy currents to shift your own sexual, personal magnetism, and overall energy to a sexual one that you can use to achieve multiple goals in your life. We don't target the goals directly with ceremonies, as it's done in Western sex magic, but we shift our natural energy structures to a condition where achieving these objectives and others are much more likely. It's like instead of focusing on achieving one particular partner for your life, you shift your own energy to be able to achieve a new and great partner each time that you want it and you choose to. You let others come to you instead of you coming to them. Your energy shifts to accommodate what you want to become. So the techniques must also be fully different. If you want to use sexual energy for non-spiritual purpose, you need specific techniques which work on lower energy centers and with different energy currents than the ones used for spiritual purposes. We use awareness and subtle manipulation of energy currents in your lower centers instead of the high spiritual centers. And you may be thinking, well, why not just go with the high energy centers and get everything, the spiritual objectives and the lower objectives? Well, the reason is simple. When you focus on working with sexual energy in the high energy centers, you get further away from the more earthly benefits. You can achieve great results spiritually, which won't necessarily manifest physically. You won't necessarily have any kind of sexual magnetism with other people around you if you are only focusing on spiritual work. It can happen if your energetic structure is already prepared for that, but more often than not, it doesn't quite work this way. Spiritual enlightenment doesn't mean material and earthly achievements, as we all know. And by working with the spiritual kind of sexual energy techniques, you get further and further away from this kind of earthly benefits. So it ends up being your own personal choice. If your goal is spiritual self-transcendence and enlightenment, then you're much better off with the tried and tested Eastern traditions that have thousands of years. If your goal is more modest and very earthly, then the Charisma School approach to sexual energy will work wonders for you. We created 2 different trainings to work with sexual energy. The first training, Sexual Energy Mastery, handles the discovery and manipulation and development of the sexual energy. It uses a specific and innovative process to help you discover sexual energy and allow it to flow freely inside of your body. This will end all blocks and repression of sexuality in an easy-to-do way. The second training is a Sexual Magnetism, which works mostly in the projection and externalization of this energy with specific techniques to exteriorize and use this energy for specific applications, laser targeted or increasing your own overall sexual magnetism to be able to attract sexual partners easily. For more information, the rest of this series, a frequent newsletter on these topics, and more training course on sexual energy, personal magnetism, charisma, and the magnetic gaze, visit charismaschool.com.